Hello, my name is Kedar Ahmed and you're watching RPTV. In this video, you'll watch a discussion between stakeholders and the planning committee concerning the future plans and agendas regarding the strategic direction of the Regent Park Social Development Plan. Members of the meeting discussed strategic planning, the evaluation of presentations, funding requests, the stakeholders in-person meeting, data management, and logistical arrangements, amongst other things. Now let's continue to the video to see what they have to discuss in further detail.
Hey folks, welcome to the April 18th Planning Committee meeting. Today we'll have Walied facilitating, just making sure that we can see the agenda on the screen. Could I get a thumbs up or I'm just gonna assume everyone's having technical difficulties. I see no one's screen or no one. Okay, I see a thumbs up. Thank you, Cher. Waleed, I'll give it to you now. All yours.
Sounds good. Does anyone want to read the purpose? But before we do that, I'm just going to do a quick land acknowledgement and African ancestor acknowledgement as well. So give me 1 second. Okay, so I'm gonna start off by acknowledging that Regent Park is in the city of Toronto, and we acknowledge that we are in the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and it's now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaties, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. I also want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the fact that we should acknowledge all treaty peoples, including those who came here as settlers, as migrants, either in this generation or in generations past, and those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. We pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent. So I'm just going to ask if someone quickly could read out the purpose of the planning committee before we get formally started.
I can.
Okay, go ahead.
Purpose of the Planning Committee. The committee makes recommendations to the SDP stakeholders table on strategic direction and action priorities, intercommittee alignment, coordination, stakeholder and resident engagement. By supporting the SDP stakeholder table to ensure that the meetings are effective, supporting the 4 work groups to be prepared to report at the SDP stakeholder table meetings, address requirements and/or requests that need a quick response, identifying information and/or expertise that stakeholders require in order to make sound and informed decisions. And lastly, developing facilitation approaches that increase the capacity of all stakeholders to engage in discussion and decision-making.
Thank you so much. So our agenda is as follows, and we're just going to review the agenda before we approve it and move forward. We're going to go through the proposal of agenda items, the next facilitator. So Ishmael, please help me identify who signed up. And then any updates on city staff and councilor meetings, which is a standard item. So we'll do a quick report back on that. Then we're going to have a discussion on strategic planning. So overall structure. So we're going to, for decision, discuss the evaluation slides that will be substituted with ones decided upon by the evaluations committee. We're going to review the presentation that Michael put together with regards to strategic planning. Then we're also going to have a discussion on dates for May with regards to strategic planning that we will be able to convene as a group. And then we're going to discuss the role of consultants. And then we're going to now, the next item we're going to be talking about is the April 25th Stakeholders Table meeting, which is a week away. So I hope everyone is excited about that. So we're going to just confirm the facilitation, confirmation from working groups about the engagement activity, the evaluation presentation overview, and the rest of the items that we're going to discuss. I just want to let everyone know that we've had the elections of the EED co-chairs happen just this Tuesday, so this week. And we have Colin, who's representing market residents as one of the co-chairs, and then Hashim Nuran and Elena, I'm trying to remember Elena's last name, who is representing TCHC. So those are the folks that were elected through that process. So we'll hopefully get some feedback from Ishmael about input from those working groups as well. So let's just move on down the agenda, please. Yeah, and then then we're going to discuss. Yeah, we're going to discuss the motion that's going to be presented at the stakeholders meeting as the last item before we conclude our meeting. Okay. Okay, so we'll get started with the first part of the meeting. So before we do so, is everyone comfortable with the agenda? And if there are any additional items that folks would like to propose?
All good, I
Okay.
guess.
All good. Gail, go ahead.
Yeah, my ask would be for maybe a formal announcement, and I don't know if you can facilitate that, Ismail Mohammed from EED on the co-chairs. That's one. And second, I think there would need to be a clarification for people to understand, because my understanding is that one of the co-chairs does not live in Regent Park, but there is something in the terms of reference, I don't know, that says as long as they are returning, I guess, I'm not sure who's returning, but as long as they're returning, then they can be a co-chair. So I think that that is something that maybe people just need a quick refresh on, because I myself don't know, and I think there are a few folks that don't know that that is indeed the case. So that those are my 2 points on the election of the co-chairs.
Sounds good. Thank you, Gail. Any other remarks? Okay. I see a comment from Marwan that we have to redefine what living in Regent Park looks like. Note taken. The several residents that used to live in Regent Park have been relocated to Adelaide. That is correct. That is correct, Marwan. We'll discuss that when the time comes. Okay, so any other items? Seeing no one else speaking to anything else, I'm assuming our agenda is approved through consensus. So anyone opposed to any agenda item? Seeing none. Okay, we'll move on to the next piece of the meeting. Please, Ishmael, talk about the next facilitator. You're muted. Go ahead.
Folks, with regards to the next facilitator, I put out a request. Unfortunately, I didn't get any responses. So I've been relying on the old 2023 facilitator list, many of which are unable to facilitate. So for just next meeting, I would like to ask the group here today if anyone's willing to facilitate. Next week, the meeting will be at 5 p.m. You could either leave a comment here or just quickly raise your hands and I'll put you down as next week's facilitator.
The next meeting will be in May because it
Correct.
it
Next week is
coincides with
the
the stakeholders table.
Thank you, Michael. So Michael's correct. Next week's meeting will be the stakeholders table meeting. So the next planning committee meeting will be May 2nd. So it will be 1 p.m. on May 2nd, and I'm asking if any one of you here today could facilitate that meeting. I'm not quite sure what's on the agenda yet. I see no hands. Okay, well then expect another email from me shortly then.
I think it'd be a good idea, Ishmael,
I
to
might do it if you really can't find anybody.
okay, Michael's
Thank
put
you,
his
Michael.
forward. Thank you, Michael. And I see Adonis's hand up. So we'll go to Adonis first, and then I have an idea that we could explore. Go ahead, Adonis.
Hi, yeah, I could facilitate a meeting if you like.
Perfect. So Adonis also put his name forward. So why don't we add Adonis to the list? We also have the new co-chairs, and maybe this could be an opportunity for them to also be involved in the planning committee. I'm hoping that we could engage with not just the new EED co-chairs, but also Hadja and Leonard from safety to see if they're interested. I don't think Hadja or Leonard have had an opportunity as of
Oh,
yet.
why would you speak?
So let's reach out to them and see if they're interested as well. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the next item, which is any updates on city staff and councillor meetings. So there's been no meetings that I'm aware of, or any updates that I can share with the group. We did have Richard join us at the last, I don't think it was last planning committee, the one prior to that, because I was away last week uh, due to a family commitment. But I'm assuming that that was the most recent update. Ishmael, is there anything else you wanted to share?
No, I think that is the most recent update.
Okay. Any questions related to that? Okay, seeing none. I'm just looking at the chat. Nothing new. Okay, good. Okay, we'll move on then to the next item, which is strategic planning task force. So I'm gonna ask Michael Adonis to help support the conversation with regards to strategic planning. So why don't we start off with the overall structure? Michael, you want to go ahead and start us off?
Okay. So
Go
do
ahead.
you have the April 12th slides from, like, the file is dated April 12th? It's not, but
I do.
that's the one
I've
you're looking
opened
for.
it as well.
Okay, so later on in this meeting, after we've heard from about other slides and stuff, we'll be confirming the exact order. So this is just a proposal. So it follows the discussion we had earlier. I considered doing it in different orders, but then I realized it would have to end with the questions for the tables for strategic planning. So that's why the proposal is to put all the strategic planning slides at the end. Maybe one could just be added to the beginning just to say this is all part of the strategic planning process. But the actual content of the strategic planning process is grouped together with the questions for the tables, because that's just a lot easier to follow. So basically the idea is maybe start with just a slide that just says we're doing a strategic plan, and then go into this first slide, which is just some information, very basic information about the SDP. And then following that is the review of the last 5 years. So it kind of goes in chronological order, which I think also makes it easy to understand. So again, we might substitute other slides for the ones that are here. This is just more to show the structure and order rather than the exact content. So there's some slides which, they may not be the ones we end up using, but there are some slides they are just giving bullet points about activities over the last 5 years. So there's about 2 or 3 pages of that, which, as I say, may change. Then we want to go into the evaluation report, which is definitely not going to be the slides you see here. We'll probably show those later in the meeting. but this is just shows where it goes in the presentation. So after those 3 sections, which I don't think we have to look at in detail because these are possibly not the slides we're actually going to use, but just for the purpose of the order of them, it then goes into the strategic plan slides. So if you can get down to the first strategic plan slide.
Yes, Michael, I'm on it. Slide 15.
Okay,
strategic
so
plan.
this is basically the more substantive introduction to the strategic plan, why we're doing it and what it is. So that'll be that slide. Then it'll go to the more details on exactly which meetings we're going to have, which hopefully we can confirm today, because I'd really like to be able to announce this process on April 25th. So this next slide is some details of what we're doing. And then the one following that is the work for today, which is the questions that people will respond to at the tables. So the tables, they will get that sort of first part, the review of the last 5 years, and this piece, which is the questions. So those 2 parts will constitute the work for this day. And then after that, when we come back in other meetings, we'll get to the other parts. So that's, and then of course we'll have to end once we figure out what the exact wording is with the funding resolution at the end of the meeting. So that's the content, not the detailed content, but the structure of the content for this meeting. And after we've looked at some of the other details of it in other parts of the agenda, which are not part of the strategic planning discussion, then towards the end of this meeting, we'll decide if we can finalize that order and content. So at this point, I'd like to either go back to the April 2nd slides, or maybe you can just push it back to the first strategic plan slide here, the one that describes the components of the process, because I think that's really what we need to discuss next, is what will happen after April 25th. So can you push it back to the one that says process of strategic plan at the bottom half of that slide?
Yep. So that's what I have it on now.
Okay. So there's a number of steps there. Obviously, we want to do a review of the existing situation, both inside and outside of the SDP. And then we want to use that combined with what people said on April 25th to come up with specific recommendations, something that can be the conclusions of the strategic plan. So now if you go forward to the one that has the dates on it, which is I think the next slide. So the idea is, obviously we have the meeting on April 25th, and then in order to turn that into results, we have to sort of decide how we're breaking it down and what will be discussed. But the proposal is that in 3 meetings, we will go through first the scope and vision and direction. And I'll get to a moment why it says scope there. And then using the analysis and the scan of the city and other external situations and the work that people came up with on April 25th, we'll discuss the proposals for what the priorities and major goals of the working groups would be. And then in the 3rd meeting, we'll discuss process and structure issues. So that's the proposal of how we can break down what needs to happen before we can come to conclusions. And then hopefully that does get into a final version in June. Now, that's then the proposal. So the most important thing is in order to make this happen, we have to put some momentum behind it by actually setting dates and agreeing on those meetings for May. So in a moment, we can discuss whether we agree on that. The other thing is there was a note in the agenda about how we work with the consultants and that sort of thing. So we've had several different proposals. Some people say we should do this quickly before the consultants finish their work for the city. Some people actually said the opposite, which is let's do the strategic plan after we've seen their work. And then there's just other issues of if we are able to work with them in a more substantial way or not. Do we just work independently? So that's why, I mean, there's no way we can discuss that in detail today or on April 25th. So that's why the issues related to scope, which includes how we work with the city, were put over to the first of the 3 working meetings, in addition to like the things you'd normally expect to see there, like our own vision and direction. So because there may still be some issue as to how we work with the city and what the full scope and when we do things, that's why it was put to that meeting, because that's really the next opportunity where we can even possibly discuss that. So that's the proposal. And what I would like to see is that we agree to set 3 meeting dates in May. I mean, there's a couple of ways we can do it. We can either do it, if people don't mind doing both a planning committee and this, we could do it on the evenings of the Thursdays because we know those are available, or we could do it on the other Thursdays where the planning committee would normally meet in the evening. We could replace some of those, or we could do it on a different day. So the first thing overall is just how do we see those days fitting in? And then I do want to come out of this meeting today with dates so that they are announced on April 25th. So that's this part of the proposal is mainly about whether we can set a schedule for May. The other issues relating to the actual agenda of April 25th will wait until we've seen other slides and stuff later in this meeting before making final decisions on that towards the end of the meeting. So the main issue now is, do we agree with the overall structure, and do we agree with the meetings in May?
So excellent questions, Michael. So the proposal for those additional meetings in May is the question. Adonis, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a number of suggestions. I don't mind what you put forth, Michael. I think once the April 25th meeting, we could look at where we follow from that. Certainly, I think that work can be coordinated through the working groups in terms of some of the work in terms of specifics that relate to the working groups. But certainly, I have no problems with what you put forth. The one thing I would say is that we will always have to be flexible according to what the city and their current process is, because it may be adding our information to what they're doing. It may be, depending on when they release their report, it may be where we just continue our thing and then collaborate with the findings that the city releases. So I think regardless, we have to be flexible. So certainly we could go on the dates that you suggest. But it would really be, I would just add that we should be flexible on that. The other thing I would say in terms of the overall structure that you're presenting, I think it needs to, your first few slides needs to be really detailed, not detailed, but more in terms of understanding, helping to understand what the SDP is, the approach, the working groups, the committees. And then what I suggest from there is there is some thoughts of some business that has to be carried out. And that should be happening right after people have the understanding of the working groups, the understanding of the committee, the understanding of the stakeholders table, and then you present the motion, whatever motion or business that has to be done. And then going to the strategic planning, the evaluation, and then the strategic planning process that you have outlined.
Okay, so that's an option, is to move the funding motion up to between the reports and the beginning of the strategic plan part of the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
The other part, the first thing you said about the SDP, I think people are going to get that, because immediately following that one slide is the work of all the working groups for the last 5 years. So they're going to have plenty of opportunity at the next few slides that follow that to really hear about the SDP. So I'm not too worried about that. I think they will get that.
I'm suggesting you take away, so that the work of the SDP is the accomplishments that will be presented at the table. Yeah. Am I right? Yeah, so take that out.
But we're going to put those, I hope we're going to put those slides in there at that section where I have impact. I called it impact report because people use that a lot. We could change it to accomplishments, but it's basically the same thing. I hope we put those slides up. They will, of course, also see it at the tables, but I'd like to have the slide, like, not a lot of slides. I had it in just, I think, 4 slides or 3 slides. Now, Ishmael may have a slightly longer version, I'm not sure, but I would like to go through those slides because that completes what you said, like giving people a better picture of the SDP. So that was what I assumed was going to happen, is that we'd have like 1 or 2 overview of the SDP, and then they'd hear about the work of the SDP in the slides.
Yeah, Michael,
and
that's
it would
where
also, of course, be on the table so they can write on it and work on it. But I did assume it would go in the slides.
Yeah, Michael, I disagree with you. I think that if you look even at the communications accomplishments, we have over 25 accomplishments.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be a whole lot of slides if you're adding the 4 working groups.
Right.
So I suggest don't put any of the accomplishments of the working groups. Just
but what about the short version? If you look at those slides,
no, I'm suggesting no short versions. I'm suggesting we have the working groups, the issues of the working groups, which is safety, communications, community building, and employment. Those are the issues that we're working on. The working groups that were established to address those issues, right, in terms of their broad, what they're made out of. So some information about the working groups, the information about the committees, and those I've seen that you have some broad information about that. And then essentially, so that gives people understanding and of course, the stakeholders table. So people understand what the structure of the SDP is. And then you go right to the motion because they understand that the stakeholders table is the decision-making body of the SDP. So that's why I say go straight to that motion. And
Agreed.
Then the evaluation and report, the strategic planning that you want to do. And from there, they break off to look at the accomplishments of the working groups where they break off to the tables. And they look and have detailed conversations about that.
So if that's the case, then it's not obvious we do need anything more than that one slide, because that slide already says the things you mentioned, which is what are the working groups, what are the committees, and what is the stakeholders table. So if we decide not to present any of the accomplishments in the slides, then it really does just come down to that one slide, and then we can, if you want, put the motion there. I don't know, like maybe we should find out what Walied thinks about that. It was his idea. So
yeah, I suggest when I look at it, I suggest, and I made some revisions, but I suggest 4 slides. One on what you have in terms of the purpose of the SDP, one on the actual issues that the SDP was was coordinated to respond to. One is about the working groups and the committees, and then this is the one that I presented, one on the committees, and then one on the final one is on the SDP stakeholders table. And then people understand where they fit. And then you have the motion.
Yeah. Because it'll all connect, they'll have all the context as well. I like that
Yes.
idea.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's the proposal is don't present the accomplishments, present a little bit more about the structure of the SDP, and then have the motion.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I don't know if we decide that right now because we were going to look at some other things before we made the final agenda decisions. But assuming that people are more or less going in that direction, then like the part I do want to do right now is the May.
The May dates? Okay. So why don't I first ask members of the planning committee if they have any other thoughts. Adonis, thank you for sharing your proposal. I support the changes you're trying to make. But let's hear from other members of the planning committee. Does anyone have thoughts to share with regards to the format that was revised and put forward right now? Ines, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm cooking inside. I was gonna say, why not each committees, the co-chairs present what is it they do in their committee?
Yeah, presentation from the co-chairs. Yeah, that's a suggestion made by Ines. I don't think that's a bad idea. What do folks think? I'm assuming we're all comfortable with that because no. Does anyone want to say anything? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, under the whole strategic planning process, the idea is that the co-chairs will be sitting with the tables.
Okay.
And when the list of accomplishments come up, they'll be helping people to understand what those lists of accomplishments are. So in a way, it's what Ennis says, but except it's not presented right at the front end. It's presented during the interactive pieces where each person goes around to the tables and they have these discussions with the co-chair about their working groups and about their accomplishments.
So they're facilitating the conversations at the table, basically.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Ines, what are your thoughts of that?
It's fine with me.
Okay, perfect. Any other suggestions or changes with regards to the format? I'm seeing no hands up. No one speaking. Nothing's been said on the chat. Okay, I think we have built consensus on the format for the 25th. Michael, we're now gonna have a discussion on the May dates. So why don't we open that up, Ishmael? Are we proposing the meeting dates when planning is meeting or separate meeting dates? What are your thoughts, Michael?
I'm not necessarily in a position to know what people would prefer in that regard. I mean, I would happily do them in addition to planning and not miss any planning meetings, which means, but maybe other people don't want that. So as long as we get the meetings done, we will be in a good position. So I will leave it to other people when they think that should happen. I mean, I would have put them on the same days as the planning committee was meeting at 1, and then I would have these at 5, but I don't necessarily assume that other people would want that.
Okay, thanks for being candid with us about your thoughts. I believe in the past, what we've sort of decided strategically is we're going to spend a lot of time planning for doing the strategic planning process at the planning committee. But Adonis, your hand is up. I'm not sure if it's an old hand or a new hand. Do you want to speak to that? It's an old hand. Yeah, so I actually think it's best because we don't want to overwhelm folks with meetings, have the SDP strategic planning meetings at the same time as the planning committee. So it's part of the agenda. And I think this will also help us bring new folks to the table, so they have a better understanding of the work that happens at the planning committee as well, which will involve discussions on strategic planning. So Ishmael, what are the planning meetings that we have scheduled for May? Maybe, and then we'll listen to Michael next. Let's just look at those dates first, because those are dates that we must present to the stakeholders table as well.
9, 23rd, and then early in June would be
9,
the
23rd.
evening
So those are
one.
the 2 dates.
And then we'd have to go into June then.
Yeah.
Okay, so the only thing I would say about that is it's fine as far as like how many meetings people want to have or not have to do that. But then I would say that we don't even just build this as a planning committee meeting, because these would have to be working committee meetings, and I'd rather do them in person. Like, in other words, they have to be functional as strategic plan meetings. They can't just be a part of an agenda.
Okay. So if we're meeting,
if we're going to not increase the number of meetings, I would strongly recommend we don't hold planning committees on those days.
Okay. So we're having planning committee meetings bi-weekly in May, or is it weekly?
Weekly.
Well, it would normally be weekly because we haven't, changed that. But I'm just saying that if you want to do this on the same days that would have been planning committee meetings, then I would suggest that we do not try to do any planning committee business.
So why don't we alternate? I'm going to put forward a proposal, and then let's see what people think about it. Why don't we alternate? So 1 week we'll have the planning committee. The other week we'll have a focus on strategic planning. So it's much more open, and we can have that in person.
That's why those dates would come up. It would be the 9th, the 23rd, and somewhere around the 6th of June.
Okay, so those are separate from planning committee meetings. Is that
they would have been the planning committee meetings, but I think we have to basically reclassify them as strategic planning meetings and not.
Okay, I understand what you mean. Okay, so we're on this same page. So you share the same proposal as that I put forward. You share the same. You support it, I guess. Okay, so
and also,
then
we don't want people to think that they have to be part of the planning committee to attend.
Exactly.
So they should be strongly built as strategic planning meetings.
Okay, sounds good. So let's.
And what about can we, and should we do it in person?
That's a good question.
I think also with hybrid, but I mean, it's going to be so much harder to not do this in person.
Sounds good. So Ishmael, I'm gonna need your help. When's the first planning committee scheduled for May?
So I have here on the screen. I'm just wanted to make sure, Walied, are you able to see that on the screen?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. So we have May 2nd, 1 p.m. being the first planning committee meeting. And then the week of May 9th, where we start at 5 p.m. Week of or May 16th is 1 p.m. again for planning committee. May 23rd, 5 p.m. again, and then May 30th, 1 p.m.
Okay,
So
why don't we
basically have 2 evening meetings in the month of May for planning committee.
Why don't we dedicate the 2 evening meetings to strategic planning? That way we'll have a better turnout. People are working, people have other responsibilities during the daytime and early afternoon. So I would like to propose that the 2 evening meeting times for planning be dedicated to strategic planning, and that's what we could promote at the stakeholders table.
It's going to
Michael,
be
are you comfortable with that?
to fit everything. Well, not so much, because it's going to be quite hard to really do a good job in 2 meetings.
Well, we're gonna have more than 2 meetings.
I would still keep the 3rd meeting on June 6th or whatever that date is.
Yeah, we'll have another meeting.
I would
just
still
talking
go with
about
the
the May meetings first. Let's talk about the May meetings first, and then talk about June next.
Well, all right. I mean, but I think we have to get the schedule. So if we're pushing this a little bit into June, then we can't go to April 25th and just announce 2 meetings if there's actually 3. So the 3rd meeting is part of the proposal, and if we don't want to, if we want to spread it out a bit more and do it on June 6th, that's fine. But I strongly recommend we approve all 3.
we're gonna approve all three. So why don't we look at the June date? So we have identified 2 evening meeting dates for strategic planning for May. Ishmael, for June, when is our first planning meeting?
So Michael's correct. June 6th is the first planning committee meeting in the evening.
In the evening? Okay, so then we will go with that date, Michael. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Okay, so those are the 3 dates. Can we have the amended proposal with those dates on the screen? And then we'll get feedback from members of planning committee.
So, all right.
Okay, Ishmael's just making corrections to that proposal with the dates. So just let's hold her a second.
Okay, so I'll just read the proposal. So strat planning will be on alternating weeks in the existing planning committee meeting dates, and it will be the evening. So it will be the evening planning meetings will be changed to for strategic planning. And so the specific dates that we have in mind are May 9th, May 23rd, and June 6th. These 3 dates will be the dedicated strat planning meetings.
Perfect. And if folks want childcare or have other needs, we'll make sure to let people know at the stakeholders table. Okay. Okay. Does anyone have any thing to add or with regards to the proposal or any other changes? Adonis, is that a new hand or old hand?
Hold hand, sorry.
No worries.
Um,
Okay. Let's see. Hand.
so I suppose we're going to try to get Daniel's spectrum for those times.
Yes. Yes. We'll try to book it. After this meeting, I'll work with Ishmael to see if we can book those meeting spaces. And we'll try to make it hybrid so people can participate in person and online. Okay. Okay. Seeing no additional feedback, I think we've built consensus on that proposal and on the presentation made by Michael. So thank you, Michael. Is there anything else that you wanted to discuss? I think the next point is with regards to working with the consultants. So
that's just the thing we already covered about it will have to be discussed at the scope and visioning meeting, because
okay, that's the first
we
meeting.
need to sort of figure out, as Adonis said, how to be flexible with this.
Okay, good points. Gail?
Yeah, maybe I was trying to understand like who's leading the session? Is it a consultant or is there somebody with that knowledge that's leading the session? Is there a specific methodology or something that's used or just a series of questions?
Go ahead, Michael.
So we have a series of questions for April 25th, and that will be handled by people from the working groups. For the other meetings, yes, we have to have a more detailed plan for this. I mean, certainly I know how to facilitate that kind of a meeting, but, hopefully we'll get other people involved as well. There's no consultants for this. The reference to consultants is the city's consultants doing the refresh and how do we work with them. But they're not going to be working on this strategic plan. So it is up to us. And I mean, I think we can do it, but yes, there will have to be prep meetings as well.
Sounds good. Okay. Any other questions?
Is Deanie out of this process as well?
I think we're going to plug Deanie into this process, Gail, as much as possible. I know she was away because of the strike, but I'm hoping to have conversations with Deanie early next week to see what role Jeannie can help with. And if we do need to work with the consultants that the city have already contracted, then there could be an opportunity there as well.
Well, the best opportunity for them is that they should be attending the April 25th meeting, because that's when they're going to hear the broad range of what people say.
Yeah, and we can invite them to that. The consultants seem very open to having those conversations with the members of the planning committee. So we can for sure invite them. Yeah. Okay, seeing there's no other discussion on this proposal, we're now going to move on to the next item, which is the stakeholders table, which is next week on April 25th. I hope you're all excited. It's going to be fun. Ishmael, you've done a phenomenal job helping us book space. We've already got a budget put together, a business proposal for the 50K that we shared with the city. Maybe what we could quickly start off with is, because I was away last week, was there any confirmation from the city with regards to the budget? Just because I'm interested in any budget, any budget constraints that we need to work with. So why don't you start us off with that piece, and then we'll move on to the other questions you posed on this agenda item. Go ahead.
Sounds good. So with regards to the budget, after we submitted the business case, city staff recognized that this meeting was coming up fast and we needed a response quickly. So they approved $1,250 for this meeting alone. They have yet to respond with regards to the greater business case, the larger business case with all the other meetings, but they did allocate $1,250 each for this meeting.
Okay, and according to our notes, is $1,250 sufficient for the meeting, or is it less than what we requested?
So it is less than what we requested. I can go back. Let me find the business case. Give me 1 second, and I'll be able to tell you exactly how much we originally requested.
Okay, sounds good.
Actually, let me just share the screen here. 1 sec. This will be easier.
Thanks, Ishmael.
Okay, so yep, we're looking at the right one here. So this is what we had requested in our business case. So this is the business case for 2024, reducing barriers, honoraria, child minding, and then food. So we did not ask specifically for meetings. So we didn't say, okay, this meeting, we're going to need money for this, but we did it broken down by what our budgets normally look like. So we have honoraria involved, we have child minding involved, we have food involved. For food alone, we requested, so I stand corrected, we did request $1,000 per meeting for the food alone. And then we did child minding separately, but we will have to use the $1,250 for child minding. So those are two expenses.
So my understanding of what you just said was that $1,250 in total.
Correct.
So food, childcare, everything, right?
Everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have basically about 1,000, but I see a comment from Gail that 900 is for food. Is that the case?
My comment is that is the cost of food for 40 people. I think 40 or 50, I can't remember what my calculation was. So again, so come in back to this in terms of food. Folks who are entrepreneurs who are making food are being told, we can pay you $7 per plate. And we're not accepting that. And if you'd like, please, Cafe Zuzu, other places, you can get food from them. But you cannot ask an entrepreneur to value their food at $7 per plate. $10 per plate is also unacceptable. Any place you go to pick up a meal, Popeyes, Wendy's, you are at $25, right? So either maybe we are not having food, but you cannot force an entrepreneur to charge $13. That does not even cover the cost of their hydro. So I'm putting that out there, and I think you could hear the passion in my voice. But that's what's been coming back to me from entrepreneurs who've been asked to cater the stakeholders table, right? So we have been quite inconsistent, and I get that we have a budget constraint because there's no way you get 12, 15 is going to cover all the things that we need to, and therefore maybe it is no food. Maybe it is that you're getting samosas or empanadas, and that's okay, right? We did not even cater for the amount of people. Well, so we catered for 40 people for EED meeting this week. We actually catered for 60 people. That was the amount of food that was given. And all the food was gone, right? People were upstairs, they took the food. There was nothing left. We barely got our plates back. So please bear these things in mind. And we know people come to the meeting, well, they come for the food, they don't stay for the meeting as well. So there is a need for people to eat. There absolutely is a need. But we cannot then decide that we give an entrepreneur $13 per plate for a full meal.
Yeah, point taken, Gail. Thank you so much for your passion and conviction to ensure that caterers are compensated fairly. I am supportive of $900 being allocated for food. We do have food insecurity in our community, and I think that's a way to reduce barrier, and this is what the funds are for. So for sure, we should proceed with that expense, but that leaves us with $350 in the budget. Ishmael, from the discussions you've had with Richard, and Joel was also part of this meeting, maybe Joel can speak to this, is what is the, what can we do with that 350? Will it be sufficient for childcare? Will it be sufficient for other expenses related to this meeting? And if not, how much do we need so that we could potentially follow up with the city with those gaps? So I'll ask you to go first, Ishmael, and then Joel, if he wants to add anything.
So I'll go back to the email and double check, but from what I remember, I don't think the city specified how we were to spend that money. So they allocated this amount of money, so the 1,250 for this meeting. And my understanding is they left it up to the planning committee and the SDP as a whole to decide how it is that we want to spend that money.
Okay. So
But
maybe
while Joel speaks, I will go back to the email and I will confirm that.
okay. I would like to understand the gaps, or if the 350 is sufficient. Joel?
Well, the only cost that I'm attending to and like completely aware of is the child minding piece, and which I don't actually know what the cost would be yet because I don't know how many kids we're going to want to be prepared for. It's either 140 or 210.
Okay. So we have requested folks to register if they need any childcare, right, in advance of the meeting. So we'll probably have better numbers early next week, Ishmael, is my assumption.
Yeah, I should be able to confirm how many by agenda planning, so Tuesday.
Okay. So the childcare is the only other expense that we're planning for apart from food. So I think we're covered then, right? I think this is sufficient. 40 residents were gonna show up, 40 for 40 residents. And then we have childcare. What if we have more than 40 people show up? Do we want to have snacks? Is this enough for drinks? Like, and maybe this is a question for Gail. Does the $900 include drinks or just primarily just food?
That's food. If you want, and it depends on the drink, that could go all the way up to 23. But if you just like some water with some beautiful fruits inside to quench your thirst, that's complimentary.
Okay. Why don't we go with water and make that
Hi,
complimentary?
can I interrupt?
Yeah, go ahead, Adonis.
All the food has already been organized already. So I don't know why, because last meeting I was dedicated to do that. So
Yeah.
all the food has been ordered. All the drinks have been ordered. And I did go through everyone who's in the food cafe. So everything is done as far as that is concerned.
Excellent.
So
Thanks.
I don't know what you're sorry, I'm in another meeting as well. So I'm finding it really difficult to keep up, but We've already ordered. The venues are already contracted, and the rest is just drinks that we're getting.
Excellent. Thanks for that report back, Adonis. I wasn't here the last meeting, so those are the reasons why I asked those questions. But I'm glad that the food order has been taken care of, and we have money for childcare. And there's no other additional expense that we've identified. Okay, so what about supplies for the strategic planning discussions at the groups? Do we have that in kind? I'm assuming yes.
I wonder if we should stay focused on the stakeholders table meeting for now, and we know we have to address that, but maybe should we get this stuff done?
Well, you still need some supplies for the stakeholders table discussions. It won't be much.
Okay. So maybe that's an expense we need to think about beyond childcare. It's the supplies for that for those deliberations.
As long as like we're basically doing it at the tables, then we don't need a huge amount of printing because people can share it at the table. So we just need somebody to agree to provide moderate amount of printing.
Okay. Does Regent Park Focus
And plus,
or
like
YSM?
some basic supplies like pens and that kind of thing should be, find somebody who would bring those. Not much. It really doesn't require a lot of supplies.
That's true. Okay, so I just want to make sure that someone's responsible for that. Will Regent Park Focus or YSM be comfortable with taking that on?
This is a printing request?
Yeah,
Printing out the questions and supplies, pens.
I could work with whoever around that as well.
Okay, thanks, Adonis. So Adonis can help us with that. Joel, let us know if you can do so as well.
We can also do that, yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So we've got Joel and Adonis supporting that specific need. Okay, we're now going to move on to the confirmations for the meeting. So with regards to the stakeholders table co-chairs, so I will be facilitating hopefully with Ines as the co-chair. So that's a confirmation. And then with regards to the working groups about engagement activities, could someone clarify what that means? Ishmael, maybe you can help us with that.
So really, which point did you need clarification on?
Confirmations from working groups about engagement activity.
Right, so I just wanted to take a little bit of time to kind of see if there's any working group members here that are willing to participate in the engagement activity. So working groups have been notified that this activity is taking place, but we've received no update with regards to the report for information from all the working groups. We've received some, but no confirmation as to who will be sitting at these tables. So I've realized that planning committee, we've decided that, you know, working groups will participate. They will kind of facilitate the discussion at their own tables, but I'm looking for specific names of who it is that will be sitting at the respective tables. I didn't want to just assume that it'd be co-chairs, but I wanted to ask here who it is that will be attending to those tables.
Excellent question. So I'll ask whoever's co-chairs, co-chair of the working group at this meeting to confirm. I'm thinking of Fardosa. I'm thinking of Joel. I'm thinking of Marshida. I'm thinking of Adonis. We'll connect with the other co-chairs after this meeting, Ishmael. So Haja, Leonard, and Jamal from safety, and Jerome from safety, and then the new co-chairs of EED who just got elected this week will probably have to follow up, but I suspect we will get a confirmation from them as well. So why don't we ask the current co-chairs who are members of planning committee if they're confirmed to lead the engagement activity. So why don't we start off with Joel and then Marshida? And are you folks comfortable with that?
I can go first. I think I already emailed this morning saying that I can take over. I can be there around 5:15 because I'm in school. I can finish there and come join you guys around 5:15.
Perfect. Thank you, Marshida, for confirming your participation. Appreciate that. Joel?
So Fardosa and I are here in the meeting. We're two of the co-chairs, and we'll meet with Rabia tomorrow, and we'll respond at that point.
Okay, so we'll get a confirmation from community building tomorrow after their meeting. Adonis, I'm assuming you're a yay, but you'll be doing a lot of stuff as well. Okay, I'm assuming Adonis is a yes. He'll be at the meeting. So we'll follow up with the safety network and EED, right? Those are the only two. Excellent. Okay, so working group accomplishment submission. Ishmael, you had a question related to that?
Yeah, sorry, 1 second, just taking notes here.
Thank you, Adonis, for confirming you'll be there. So we've got confirmation from communications and community building will confirm tomorrow, and we'll follow up with the other two. Okay, go ahead, my friend.
Sorry, folks, I know there's a lot over here on the screen, so it can get quite confusing. But basically what it is that we're trying to decide is the order of this presentation. So on April 25th, we're all coming together. There's going to be a bit on evaluations. There's going to be a bit on the strat planning, and then we're going to go right into the engagement activity. But between the two, to the strat planning and the eval, to better help us make the decision as to which one of the two groups go first, I wanted to share what it is that evaluations will be presenting that day. The slides are not yet ready. I haven't gotten a chance to put the slides together. And poor Caitlin has a presentation tonight, so she wasn't able to put it together either. But when the evaluations committee last met, they came up with just some high-level items that they wanted to share. And hopefully this will help us make a more informed decision. So the first slide will be basically responding to the evaluations of social cohesion and inclusion. Social cohesion and inclusion is our overarching goal here at the STP. And so the evaluation slide will be addressing that. One, using the times. So we've used the times framework for evaluations. I won't get into too much detail about it here. And we'll also be using the social cohesion questions from the surveys that went out last year. So that's the first thing we're going to share. And the next thing that we're going to share is specific recommendations that came out of the working group presentations. So early this year, I've been meeting with working groups and sharing recommendations that came out of the evaluations. And I wanted to share some of those in slide 2. A lot of them are overlapping between groups, so that'll be shared over here. The third item will be attendance. So there weren't too many groups that took attendance. But for what we have, I did want to share the attendance and kind of how that's changed throughout the year. And maybe even comparing 2021 attendance data to 2023. And then the last slide will be student analysis. So we currently have University of Toronto students, not Jeff and Abba, but 2 other students, Cameron and Borna, who are doing analysis for the first round of surveys and second round of surveys, and I wanted to share the difference on slide 4. So again, 4 slides it looks like over here. 1 is going to be social cohesion and inclusion, 2 will be working group recommendations, 3 will be attendance, and then slide 4 will be student analysis, comparing first round of surveys to second round of surveys. Some additional notes here that I have on the screen for those that are not reading. The idea is to encourage attendees to come to these meetings. Sorry, disregard that part. Number 6, tying the 2023 findings to long-term direction and being resident focused. So with the whole idea of presenting the evaluations is to sorry, folks, lost my train of thought. It's to address the long-term direction. And again, being resident focused, we want to make sure that the presentation is done in a language that the residents understand, that they can follow, and that it's presented in a way that we can take as the SDP, we can take the recommendations and move forward with that. So that is what I wanted to share. So next that I wanted to move on to is the draft agenda. And over here, we'll be making the decision as to on what will go first, whether it'll be the strategic planning or if it will be the evaluations. So as per the 2 slide decks that we've shared earlier this presentation, so one of them being Michael's and the other one being the revisions that Adonis had made. We didn't go into too much detail with this, but these 2 slide decks are proposing that we talk about the working groups first, right? So we have a welcome, we talk about the introduction of the stakeholders table, and then the introduction into the 4 pillars, and then we go into the evaluations and then strat plan. So I wanted to ask the group over here is if we're okay with doing evaluations before we go into the strategic planning.
So we also just discussed putting in the funding resolution between the stakeholders table and the evaluation.
Sorry, Michael, could you repeat that?
So the order that we had discussed was stakeholders table introduction,
Correct.
funding resolution, evaluation report, and strategic planning. So the new thing is that the funding goes before evaluation.
Thank you, Michael.
And the other question I have is, do we need to decide the exact content of the stakeholders table slides or slides now, or do we just agree that that's where it goes in the agenda? I mean, I'm not sure I have a huge concern about it, but I haven't actually seen what Adonis did. So I don't know if we want to just settle that today or we just want to agree on the order.
So we'll talk about the actual content afterwards. What I would like to hear back from the committee here today is, are we okay with this overall structure in terms of order of items in the agenda? The timing and everything will have to get adjusted now that we have the funding resolution item here as well. So basically we'll be doing a welcoming piece, line acknowledgement, introduction to the stakeholders table, introduction to the SDP along with the 4 pillars. Then we get into the funding resolution piece. Then it'll be evaluations. Then lastly, the strategic plan. So the introduction to what the strategic planning is, the engagement activity that we have planned, and then we break off into that activity.
Right, so there's like the 3 slides for strategic plan, and then we actually go and do it at the tables.
Correct. So Michael, I'm not looking at the exact details of the, again, we're not looking at the exact slides just now. I'm just looking at the order. So I'll come back to you. If I can just have Adonis speak because he had his hand up. Adonis?
Yeah, the only issue, I think it's a good order. The only issue I might have is that you are presenting the evaluation findings, but what are the recommendations? Because the recommendations should not be part of, I feel, should not be part of this piece, but if they're related to the working groups, should be recommendations that are put on the accomplishment. Does that make sense?
Sorry, Adonis, someone just joined the meeting. They weren't muted. Could you repeat the last part? So it doesn't make sense to have the recommendations from the evaluations being presented? Is that what you're saying?
The recommendations as they relate to the working groups. Again, we're getting feedback from the community about the working groups themselves. And it's better to hold off on any recommendations that are made that are not data, right? presenting the evaluation is data, right? What you will learn from there, right? But in terms of recommendations, why aren't they part of either the working group's conversations or and when they look at accomplishments, like we're getting feedback around that. It doesn't make sense to me that you're presenting recommendations when people haven't even seen what the accomplishments are of the working groups themselves. That's the only thing I would say is to hold off on the recommendations that the evaluation committee.
So Adonis, just for clarity, do you want to bring the evaluations and benchmark committee report back later on in the agenda?
I think Adonis had said that he's okay with the order, but Adonis, feel free to
Okay.
correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I'm okay with the order. It's just bringing the recommendations, taking out the recommendations from the evaluation report itself.
Can I also say something?
Yes,
go ahead,
Michael,
Michael.
go ahead. Sorry.
So I kind of agreed to that with that, but for a slightly different reason, which is that I think it would be good if the evaluation report included the observations, but not the recommendations, because the discussion on recommendations and proposals we want to have for the strategic plan at the tables is over a longer period of time. So presenting immediate findings that relate to last year and how we could change it for this year it's like you don't want people in that 1 year frame of mind when they're having these discussions. I would say I would agree with that the evaluation report should not include the recommendations because those can have already and can continue to be dealt with by the working groups. And we should keep the stakeholders table meeting to the sort of the 5-year type issues, which are, not immediately coming out of 1 year of the work. It's coming out of the whole 5 years and the next 5 years. So I'd like to keep people focused on a longer time frame.
Okay, so noted. Michael agrees with Adonis, and we'll leave out the specific recommendations. Okay, so again, just going back, I just wanted to make sure that everyone's on the same page with regards to the order of the presentation. So we'll have time for socializing, then dinner will be served between 5:15 and 5:45, dinner, meal, refreshments, whatever we want to call it. And then from 5:45 to 6 o'clock, we'll have the stakeholders table co-chairs welcome everyone to the meeting and we'll get started. Without going into too much detail about the facilitation, the first item after the welcome will be, so it'll be welcome, it'll be introduction to the stakeholders table, introduction to the SDP, along with the 4 pillars. And then we'll go into the motion of releasing the SIF funds to the Regent Park community. And thereafter, we'll get into the evaluations, then the strat plan and the strat plan engagement activity.
Okay.
And then wrap up. And
And then
we,
we wrap up.
sorry, I just thought about this right now. But in the past, we did raffles as a means to engagement. I don't know if you have some funds available after childcare, but if we could maybe dedicate some funds to a raffle, that would be greatly appreciated. I know a lot of residents appreciate that.
Can I
ahead,
respond
Adonis.
to that?
Yeah, go ahead, Adonis.
I don't think we should use a raffle. I think we have an interactive piece where people are engaged in the tables. And what we could do is we could maybe figure out to do raffles by the working groups themselves. Like each group that comes in and does a round table, that they draw one raffle or something and give it, but it's done in the working groups as part of the interactive pieces, not as a general thing.
Mhm.
Again, we're just saving time and get people to work in the groups and to interact in the working groups.
Okay, so more of that, I guess, way of saying thank you within the discussions through the working groups.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I hope, yeah, if we want to do that, we can do that. That can save us time. Welcome, Miguel, and sorry, Jane. Okay, so we will then move on to the next item, unless there's something else you want to get clarity on, Ishmael. And we have Gail next.
Yeah, so I would say in terms of the raffle that we asked TCHC to pay for that. I think the
Yeah.
resident, the people that who want the thing are TCHC residents, and I think that's where that should lie. If you'd like to do that, and I like the idea of doing it as part of the interaction in the working groups. I'd like to see what is the cost breakdown for food. So going back to that, because again, $10 per plate is not acceptable, and folks are complaining. So I'd like to see what the breakdown is. I'm not sure why we can't get that.
Gail, correct us if I'm wrong, but you suggested $900 be spent. Adonis, you are taking the lead on the food order. So do you want to maybe clarify that?
Sorry, it's well over 900. That's for sure. 7, 8. It's going to be close to 11 or 1200 when it's all said and done.
Can I ask a question?
And that makes more sense for me. And again, you guys said it was a budget of $12.50. So I'm just trying to understand how that fits into the budget. Maybe there's somebody else who's paying directly for the food.
No,
Okay,
just have a question.
let's get some clarity here. The full approved budget by the city is $12.50. That's what we heard.
Mhm.
and that's what's been spent. That's what's been spent. When
So
you
the-
add paper plates, utensils, drinks, pizza for the kids, the main course, a salad and empanadas, that's what's spent. And all the food is coming from the Regent Park Cafe vendors.
Okay, so if it's $12.50 that you've allocated, then I think we need to reach out to the city after this meeting for the childcare related expenses, right? And we'll have a better sense of that early next week with the amount of registrations. So childcare might be an expense that still needs to be covered by the city, right? Are we all on the same page? We're not spending $900 on food, but more about 11 to 1200. Is that correct, Adonis? I'm gonna check the chat. Okay. I guess we have, like, I think it'll be just clear to everyone what the final budget for food is. Is it $12.50? Is it 1200? Is it 1100? Because what the city approved was $12.50. We'll go to Gail first, unless that's an old hand, and then Joel. Gail, go ahead.
If we are as a remedy as well, if we're trying to find money for childcare, we should also consider reaching out to the organizations that are part of the STP table. That may be our fastest bet. I get that we are trying to advocate the city, but the city is saying no. And so instead of us fighting back and forth, as an addition, because they've also said that, reach out to the organizations for help. Maybe
Yeah.
that is something that we can do.
Okay, that's a good proposal for us to consider. Joel, go ahead.
I think
Maybe it's just a matter of administration. But I feel like that conceptually, the city has no problem with funding childcare, child minding. I think that the limitation they wanted to put on was how much they funded for food. Now, if we're going to say that if we're going to bill the child minding through the city, then that would leave less money for the food. So I think what I'm saying is I do agree that it's better to see if we could maybe talk to different service providers in the neighborhood and see if we could raise a small amount of money through a few different service providers. But maybe it would be good to say that would, to the service providers, we can just say it's for the event as a whole. We don't have to say what it's for, except to say that there's a portion of the food that's not covered. I think might be a better idea. And then I don't know if there's a way to break up the food bill so that some of it is billed to the city and some of it is billed to service providers. So that's the thought that I have.
Okay. So it could be billing to service providers as well. That's what I took away from what you had to say. That could be an option.
Okay, so there are
Okay.
currently 2 proposals to the meeting. So one is reaching out to TCH for funding for the raffle.
Mm-hmm.
Just wanted to make sure that everyone's comfortable with that and that everyone's aware of that before I actually send the email. Could I also ask, with regards to that, is there anyone that's willing to support? I don't want to figure out the details of that email in this meeting because we don't have too much time left. But is there anyone that I can reach out to for support if I am going to be contacting TCH for the funding? I just wanted to maybe share a draft email that would outline specifics and maybe even the amounts that we're requesting.
I will recommend Joel for sure. If Joel is okay with that. And I don't know if there's anyone else. Ines, if you're interested in supporting that ask, please do let us know. And I don't know, Miguel or anyone else who's a TCHC resident could make that ask
Hello?
as well. Yep, go ahead, Michael.
Can you just repeat what the ask to TCHC is going to be?
The request for 2TCHC is money for the raffle. And what we are hoping to ask the service providers is money for childcare. And Adonis has made it very clear that the food budget is closer to $1,100, if not $1,200. Because we only got $1,250 approved by the city. Okay, we've got Sherkan. Sherkan, you want to speak first, and then Joel?
Yeah. So I just heard you guys talking about the email or the draft that you want to send out. I can support with looking it over because I am a communication specialist. So from a strategic point of view, I can support with drafting that.
Okay, thank you, Sherkan. Okay, Sherkan has volunteered to support you with that task as well. Thank you, Sherkan. Sarah Jane?
I'm sorry I was late. What is the budget so far for child minding? We don't know how many children are registered, do we?
No, we don't, Sarah Jane. We'll find that information by early next week on Tuesday. We'll have a better sense.
So, but you can't juggle them back and forth because there may be only one child coming. There may be 10 child coming.
Agreed. And so what we're hoping to do is prepare for that possibility by making requests to the service providers to help pay for childcare. So that means Young Street Mission takes on like different groups that support the SDP. And what we're discussing right now is asking TCHC to help pay for the raffle, for the engagement at the various tables. Ishmael, you can go next.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that currently 13 people have registered for next week's meeting, and there's a request for 4 children for childminding.
Okay, but Adonis is recommending in the chat budget for 3 childminders, $50 each. So at least $150. And you said there's 4 children that were confirmed so far?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And I believe last time, Sarah Jane, I know you were childminding or you were helping with that, but I think there was about 10 children last time, Sarah Jane.
I'm 10, but I'm free. So, you only need to, you have whoever you volunteer, you're paying plus me. Yes, there were about 8 or 9 children there last time.
Thank you, Sarah Jane, for volunteering to support our children who are going to be attending the meeting with their parents.
Always, always.
Thank you, Sarah Jane. That's so amazing of you. Okay, Ishmael, you have hand is up.
Sorry, hold on.
And then we have Joel next. Joel, you can go first. I think Ishmael's made his point.
So I would say if we're gonna reach out to other service providers, I think we need a plan for that too, and we can't load too much onto Ismail. So I would ask if we could just take a moment and maybe talk with those that are here, at least to see if maybe we can't get a decision at this point, but if we could at least have it as a question that we might get have some follow-up communication on. So I'd wonder if we could do that is one, and if I could bring up another one too on childminding after that, if that's okay.
Okay, sure. Do you want to spend time right now dealing with that specific ask, or do you want to have that conversation after the meeting?
I guess I'm wondering if anybody feels they're in a position to at least say if they could bring the question back to their organizations.
Is this for the raffle?
No, this is for childminding.
Well, it's actually, and as I said, it's not for childminding, it's for the budget. It may end up being childminding just as a administrative detail, but conceptually, it's just to help to cover the costs of the budget.
So the 2 outstanding costs that we have to cover is childminding, raffles. Gail put forward the idea, which I like, to ask TCHC to fund the raffles for the engagement piece. And the other proposal was to ask service providers that support the SDP for funding related to childcare. We heard from Sher Khan, who is willing to work with Ishmael on the communication pieces that will go to TCHC with regards to those asks. I'm assuming that the representatives of the various service providers supporting the SDP will be able to take that back. But Joel, what I would love clarity on is, do you need help working on a request to YSM, Dixon Hall, the Regent Park Community Health Center, like all those groups for funding that will support our other budget other needs that we've identified in the budget, including a bare minimum of $150 for childcare.
So Gail's asking for, can I respond to that when Gail's requesting an introduction for Sher Khan, which we've had before, Gail, but if you haven't met her, maybe we could do that.
Are you calling me out?
Well, you put it in the chat, my friend.
Well, I can't be here for every meeting. Got this full
No,
time.
that's fine. No, I'm not calling you out. I'm just saying.
Love you. Love you, Joel.
Mr. Facilitator.
Okay, so I'm just waiting for your response on that, but why don't we ask Sher Khan to quickly introduce herself, and then we'll move on to the next item. Go ahead, Sher Khan.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm sure most of you know me already. I've introduced myself, but I know there's some new names. So I work at Dixon Hall. I'm the communications specialist.
Can I interrupt for a second?
You say no.
Sorry?
Sorry for the interruption. I'm not sure. Can you please introduce yourself if you don't mind?
Go ahead, Sher Khan.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes, yes.
Okay.
Rashida was just paying attention right now, so just go
Okay.
ahead.
So I work at Dixon Hall. I started on February 20th, so I'm very new to the organization. I graduated from York University. Global health is my field of study, and that's my background. So far, I've been doing communication specialist, internal and external. So I do have experience with that. And I thought I could support you guys with that as much as I can. I'm still very new to the meeting, so I know I haven't contributed a lot. But in the future, I hope to continue as much as I can with my capacity. I hope my introduction was small, but I hope if you have any questions, in addition to my role or who I am, I can answer those too.
Thank you so much, Sher Khan. And I'm so glad you're being very active within the planning committee and helping us as much as you can. So I appreciate that. Okay, so we're going to again just finalize this discussion on the budget. We know that we're going to spend about $1,100 or maybe a bit more on food. We know that the city has approved 1,250. We've agreed that we will make an ask to TCHC for raffle prizes. I don't know. I don't know if we can ask with childcare, but maybe we can also ask with childcare. And Sherkan and Ishmael are gonna take a lead on that. And if they need any advice, they can. We can support them with that. And Joel made the request that we think of what communication needs to be sent out to the service providers with regards to any additional budget expenses. So my question is very simple. Who's going to take a lead on that so that it's not something that is just left on the sidelines until next week? So Joel, you have the floor.
I'll do that together with Ismail. I think basically Ismail would be asking you to send it out. Is piece one. Piece two is I would be I don't want to send it out as a request for child minding. I don't think it's a big deal. I think it's fine to just send it out as a request to help with the budget. I do think that the funder of this money that from which we're taking the food has made it clear to us that they are happy to cover child minding costs, and they're concerned about the food costs, as I said before. And I think that's important. I think we should work with the funder in a way that acknowledges what their priorities are for this work, and that we cover what we need to cover, and that we do it in a way that's aligned with what their priorities are. And it is actually possible that within this budget we'll cover all the costs. The raffle or whatever that is, whatever that turns out to be. With that aside, we might actually cover all the costs from the 1,250. And so maybe we can also figure all that out, just depending on what the actual details are. We don't need to land on that here. So if people are okay with that, I'll take that away.
Okay, thank you, Joel. Thanks, Joel, for that clarity, and thanks for taking that on. Sarah Jane, go ahead.
I can't remember what was decided last year, but I believe the children ate free. Is that right? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, yeah, we're never going to be charging kids for food. That's ridiculous. But thank you, Sarah Jane, for that reminder. Okay, we're going to go back to Ishmael now. Ishmael, we've gone through the draft agenda. We've decided the order. We've had a discussion and decision on what's on the agenda. Then this reference to new agenda items mentioned below, but I think that was covered. April 25th, task list. Sorry, Michael, go ahead first. You had a question?
There's
go
one
ahead.
more thing that relates to the agenda, which is the exact wording of the funding resolution. Do you have
Oh,
this
I-
as a
it
separate
was-
item today, or can I just propose something right now and then we're
Oh,
finished
I
with the
already
agenda?
I put this on the chat, but I'll ask Ishmael to read it out because it was put on the slide deck and you may have not seen it because you're on the phone. So Ishmael, go ahead.
Yep. So it reads, Regent Park stakeholders table support the release of the SIF funds to the Regent Park community and SIF in full form, social impact investment funds to the Regent Park community.
I don't think that's the name of the fund we're talking about.
I might be mistaken, but that's the acronym that's used. It's the Social Impact Investment Funds, SIF.
Isn't that
Right.
the fund that was a totally separate fund that isn't from the city? That's not the one we're talking about.
Oh,
It's the name.
that's the region. You're talking about the United Way.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay. I may have mixed that up. So
So I think this is called the Action Plan Priorities Fund.
Action Plan Priorities Fund.
I mean, I don't think that's the exact name, but it's the priorities. You called it the Priorities Fund, and I've always remembered it as Action Plan Fund.
Could I quickly propose? It doesn't seem like anyone's against the idea of having this agenda item. So could I propose that we save on the actual wording of this item for agenda planning on Tuesday?
No, I think we need to finalize it today because we have
Yeah.
to send out a week notice as per our terms of reference. The wording should be finalized today, but let me look it up. I'm going on to the city website, and the language they use is the following.
Waleed, while you do that, could we have Adonis speak? His hand is up.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead,
Adonis.
Adonis.
Adonis, sorry, we can't hear you. Waleed, my guess is that you're still looking for this on the website.
Oh, I found the wording. Just 1 second. It's in the motion here. Sorry. Details adopted the Regent's Park Center. It is. Mm-hmm.
Adonis, I'm just gonna quickly mute you. Sorry. Waleed, while you find that, I just wanted to go over the information
go ahead.
package.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is the other item that I had on. So the information package, it follows the same outline as we used for the November 27th, the other stakeholders table meeting. So we have the Zoom link here. This will be emailed today. So this evening, this will be emailed to everyone that's registered for this meeting. We have a table of contents. In there currently, we have the agenda. This will, so where you read names will now all just be stakeholders table co-chairs. That is, I'll make that change now. And please ignore the details. I'm going to make sure that this reflects the approved agenda. So the one that we were just looking at.
Mm-hmm.
So once it reflects that, this will be emailed out. Below that, I have an outline. So there's 2 paragraphs in this outline. The first one just reads, basically giving the outline of the meeting. Since we decided that this meeting will be done differently from previous stakeholders table meetings, where previous stakeholders table meetings were mainly presentations with some form of entertainment, some form of activity. This one is going to be mostly an activity with regard with the strat planning. So since it's a completely different, I just outline over here that in the beginning part of the meeting, we'll be focusing on the outline. So I need to remove this because we're not focusing on the accomplishments here. But basically just going over the structure, an overview of the SDP and its 4 pillars, and then I have an overview of the actual engagement activity, which reads, the engagement activity will consist of attendees engaging with members of different working groups to ask questions and provide input. The purpose of engagement activity is twofold. First, it is for co-chairs and members to get feedback on their work, accomplishments, and overall direction. Second, it is to increase awareness of the SDP with its goals and its work to residents and other stakeholders of the community. Just short overview. And then we go into the actual report for information decision. So I don't have a report for information yet regarding the funds that we're talking about. So we're going to need that before I send this out tonight. And so the second part, report for information, I have one for the evaluations, which just summarizes the work of the evaluations. And then we also have the timeline. So this is the milestones within these years. So 2019, 2020, all the way up until present. Again, this document is linked in the agenda, so anyone can click and review. The second report for information is the social development plan working groups as a whole. So again, this was decided, I'm not sure if it was the last planning committee meeting or the committee meeting prior to that, but we decided that we would have one report for all the working groups. So in response to that, I have an overview of the SDP, right? This I found from older SDP documents in our drive. And then I have a brief overview of each of the working groups. So again, this was fine. This was pulled together from the June 2022 progress report and the November 27, 2023 stakeholders table meeting. So pulling from those two, because each of the working groups had report for informations, pulling from both of those, I came up with these short descriptions of each of the working groups. And then this one was actually submitted by communication. So thank you, Adonis, for that. And then below that, underneath relevance and implications, I have the milestones that we're talking about. So these are the milestones that some of the groups have given me. I believe community building is still finalizing their list. This is communications here that submitted their list with additional milestones for 2023. This is what I have so far for EED. So they're currently working on theirs as well. And then, sorry, I said this is communications. This is RPSN. So RPSN is over here. We have communications over here. And this is basically what's going to be submitted, or sorry, emailed to the registered attendees tonight. Sorry, folks, I know that was a lot, but we're running out of time and I just wanted to go over it quickly. Adonis, I'm assuming that's an old hand, but if that's not, please go ahead and speak. I will wait and see if there's any questions. I see a couple messages in the chat, so let me read that. Nothing in the chat. Okay, folks, so this is, again, for information. I'm waiting on EED to finalize their accomplishments. I'm waiting for community building to finalize that list as well. And I am waiting for the report for decision regarding the request of the funds. So perhaps when we go back to that topic, we can see who it is that will be able to create that for today so that I can have it sent out with this. And that's all I had for this. Walied, back to you.
Yeah, so from the language that I see that this city is using is, and I'm just looking at emails from Daniela and Richard, is there, it's categorized as SDP funding, used to support the predefined goals, objectives, and action plans of the various SDP working groups and committees. So this is, I'll copy this exact wording that I think we could use. And Michael, you're correct. It is related to action priorities. So I think when you're putting the motion together, Ishmael, it's the Regent Park stakeholder table support the release of funding used to support the predefined goals, objectives, and action plans of the various SDP working groups and committees. That's a much more accurate explanation. I see Adonis's hand up. Go ahead, Adonis.
Yeah, my concern is that the SDP funds aren't necessarily to support the work of the community, the working groups and committees of the SDP, as you had pointed out. I think what we're asking for is the city to release the final year of the SDP funds.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they, as you know, they have a process for deciding to release those funds. Some of it goes to the working groups, others go to other organizations around the community. So
Yeah,
really,
they changed that process last year. Point made. I get it what you're saying, because the process did change. Okay, so why don't we then change it to that? So I'll rewrite it again. Support the release so I'm just going to keep it very brief. SDP funds for 2024, right? So we'll take away the action plans and the other pieces because there have been some changes.
So what did you say is
So the Regent Park
away the action plans?
Yeah, so I'll just read it again. The Regent Park stakeholders table support the release of the SDP funds for 2024 by the City of Toronto.
Well,
Adonis,
as long as I know which funds we're talking about,
Well, that's the clarity that I'm hoping to seek from everyone. So Adonis, go first, and if Michael, you have another suggestion, please.
I would change it to request, and I would change it to the approved funds for the SDP. Right? It was approved by the city council, so requests for the city to release the approved funds for the 2000 whatever wording you have for the rest of it.
Okay, request the release of the approved, right?
Council approved. Use council approved.
The council approved SDP fund. Okay.
Yeah, I would still say priorities and action plan funds. Otherwise, they just might confuse it with something else.
Well, we can say not limited to supporting the predefined goals, objectives, and action plans of the various. So it's an encompassing of that wording. But let's see this version first, and then there is this version. Let's see the one that Michael will like. Request the release of the council approved SDP funds for 24 by the 4. Okay, so let's do this for not limited to. Okay, so so we could build consensus, Michael. I'll read the second version, and Adonis, let me know your thoughts as well, and everyone else. The Regent Park Stakeholders Table requests the release of the council-approved SDP funds for 2024 by the City of Toronto, not limited to predefined goals, objectives, and action plans of the various SDP working groups and committees.
I think the phrase "not limited" is going to confuse them.
Okay. So that's this. Let's just change that one more time.
Just say the funds for the working groups, priorities, and action plans. And it's even possible to just leave out working groups because they
Just say that again, Michael. For what? Say that again.
For SDP priorities and action plans. That's what it is, unless we're confused and we're talking about two different things.
No, that's what we're talking about, the same thing. Okay, for SDP priorities and action plans. Yeah. Okay. So I'll leave it as that and remove the working groups and committees. So that's Ishmael, do you mind reading the last version for Michael?
Sure. So let me just paste it onto here so members can see it on the actual documents. So the last version reads, the Regent Park Stakeholders Table requests the release of the council-approved SDP funds for 2024 by the City of Toronto for SDP priorities and action plans.
Is that okay with you, Michael?
I think that's quite clear.
Okay, sounds good. Trying to build consensus here. Okay, good. We then have Adonis. I think that's an old hand. What are the next items, Ishmael?
So that is it. So we were going to talk about, when we already started, the request
Perfect.
of releasing the funds, which is exactly what we're talking about now.
Excellent.
So we
okay,
want
my
to
friends.
this consensus on this, but
Yeah.
I didn't see anyone pushing back, but I'll let you facilitate.
Thank you so much. Okay, folks, I think we have consensus on that wording that we presented to the community. I read the terms of reference, Ishmael. We need to provide 1 week notice for any items that will require decision. So please let's include the agenda item that we just discussed in the notice, and we should be good to go. And it's 3:02. So the meeting's officially going to be concluding now, but I want to encourage folks to attend the next agenda planning meeting next week. If there's any agenda items that need to be discussed, and if anyone needs support with any of the items, please do let us know. Okay. All right. I think we're done. Okay, everyone, have a lovely Thursday. And I think Joel left, but there's a community impact jam that Regent the YSM is hosting at 5 o'clock. So check that out. I'm going to be doing something
else. To register first.
So you got to register first. Yeah. Good. So I hope you all registered. And if there's any other announcements, please do share. Okay.
Waleed, before you leave, could I just ask a question? So
go ahead, my friend.
With submitting the this request, who do I email it to? What do I include in this?
So what you need to do is when you're sending out the notice, so you know the notice that the meeting is happening next week on the 25th, you need to also attach a brief agenda. So you know how we discussed the agenda, who's welcome remarks, what's going next, what's going third, like a brief agenda with the exact wording of the motion. Okay.
So, since we have it included in the agenda that we just typed up, we approved it. That's fine. So as long as I send that out today, we're good.
Yeah.
And now, so that's going to be a report for decision. We haven't yet landed on. So this piece right here. Would we have to include a report for decision?
No, they just all this required is a notice of the agenda. So the other stuff like the supplementary documents, the feedback we're going to be getting from the working groups on the achievements and all that stuff can come later. right? That's supplementary information, but people need to know what is on the agenda. And
So I can
specifically, if there's
remove the
anything
report
that's
for information
decision
then.
related. Sorry?
So I can remove this section then?
The report for decision, yeah, you don't need to include, you don't need to send that. You just need to send the agenda.
Oh.
And where the meeting is happening, when
Got it.
it's happening. Do you need access for childcare? Food will be provided, etc. Like those
Okay,
bare
great.
minimum details.
So I include that over here and then I guess we're good to go.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Like just send the agenda. And if you need any help with anything, just give me a call. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please follow us on all our social media platforms, and for more information, please check out our website.